because there weren't a lot of people that looked like me in the firms that I was in. And I feel like when you're given that opportunity, you have an opportunity to open the door and pave the way for other people to have that opportunity. So I thought that if I left that firm, then I was kind of like letting down or not, providing that opportunity to others. And that was another part of the guilt. So,
That makes sense.
but, I feel like whatever route you go or door you go through, there are plenty of opportunities to bring diversity to the legal profession. And I really needed to look at it a lot broader. I mean, maybe that wasn't the path of how I was going to accomplish that goal, but there were many other paths to get to that same outcome.
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles. The Free Lawyer Podcast is designed for the lawyer, entrepreneur, or professional who is in some way unfulfilled, stressed, or stuck, and is looking for something better. We will discuss various blocks that limit us from achieving the personal freedom that we all desire, but have not yet fully experienced. And we will give actionable steps to free yourself from them. Are you looking to achieve a new level of success? If so, this podcast is for you. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of The Free Lawyer. Really thrilled to have with us today Margeaux Thomas. Margeaux has her own firm in Virginia, does business law and litigation, but also gives a lot back to the profession by teaching others, doing CLEs, being a speaker, and she has a very powerful story. So I'm glad to have Margeaux with us today. Margeaux, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, and thank you for having me, Gary.
My pleasure, Margeaux. Margeaux, tell me a little bit about your journey professionally and how you got to where you are today, running a very successful firm of your own in Virginia.
So I've had my own firm for about 8 years. And before that, I was working at a regional or two regional firms doing pretty much the same thing. A lot of business divorces is what I call them, business breakups, partners and partnerships, going their separate ways and trying to untangle real estate and IP and all the things that people put together when they build a business. At that point, I was also doing some consumer law. I was defending claims brought by consumers against financial institutions. So I got to get into a lot of courts all throughout the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and a lot of federal court practice, a lot of state court practice. I did some class action work. I got my feet wet in a little bit of everything, defending financial institutions. There was a mortgage crisis that happened during that time. So there was a lot of foreclosure and debt defense and things like that.
So tell me about your journey from working at large regional firms and then you decided to open your own practice. What motivated you to do that? What caused you to say, hey, I want to have my own business?
I can say it was certainly the scariest thing I've ever done professionally. And it was something that I thought about for a long time, and I never really knew exactly what it would take or how much money I would need or what that would look like. And then I had a traumatic situation when I got pregnant with my twins, and I was on bed rest for many months. And then they were born and went into the NICU, which was even more traumatic. And it just gave me a lot of downtime I had actually never had in my entire life, to just kind of reevaluate what it was I wanted to do with my career. And, it just kind of makes you put time in perspective, how much you have left, how much you've used. And, the older we get, you realize, the time in front of you may be a lot less than the time behind you. And you kind of just have to get out there and do the things you want to do, because it's not really promised. So this is something
I'm a generation beyond you or so, and approaching 70. Boy, I certainly can feel that. And it makes me realize that every single day is so important. I remember when I used to do trial work, and if I'd have a case that just for some reason made me very uncomfortable, tense, nervous, anxious, and the trial was coming up next month, and I'd be wondering if I'm going to win or lose. So many times I'd say, oh, I wish that was just behind me. I don't know if you've ever felt like that about some of your cases. And I quickly realized however many days I have here on this earth, there's a certain number. I don't know what it is. There's a certain number. Why would I ever give 45 of them away just to get past some of that experience? So I've learned today to really appreciate every day.
Right. I feel that. I think that I've had that thought, so I know what that feels like.
So what scared you about opening your own firm?
You know, the being in a firm with people and resources is comfortable. You know, it's just a comfortable feeling. Like, I know where to go. I know how long I need to be there. I know exactly what I need to do to succeed. I had made, you know, good relationships. You know, that is all I had ever done as a lawyer. So to leave that safety net and go out on my own, and I didn't have a book of business. You know, I wasn't in the rainmaking arena. I mean, that was the furthest thing from my mind. You know, I was really just thinking about doing good work for the people who were giving me work. And just, you know, leaving that was hard, and figuring out how, at the time, you know, this revelation, so to speak, happened when I was pregnant. And, you know, I had twins. So I had, you know, expenses and daycare, which is like another mortgage.
Yes, it is.
I had a good job and I was making good money, and I honestly was making more money than I had ever made in my entire life, or my parents had ever made in their lifetime. I mean, it was hard to kind of reconcile that, because I didn't come from a family of lawyers, and, you know, it all felt very prestigious, but I just kind of in the back of my mind knew that there was something else that I needed to do, and I couldn't quiet that voice no matter how hard I tried, because I really thought, you know, staying at the firm would have been, you know, a great career with people that I liked and respected, and I was doing good work. I mean, I didn't really have any complaints. It wasn't that situation where you get fired and you're like, what do I do now? Or you hate your job and you're like, I want to do something else. You know, I really did like what I was doing. I just kind of wanted to do it in a different way. And, you know, I didn't want to be chained to my desk at 70 doing the same thing. You know, I kind of just wanted to pave my own path. And it took a lot of reflection to not feel guilty about having that thought, you know, and to not try to quiet that anymore.
Well, I think that's a really important thing, to not feel guilty about knowing what your values are, knowing what you want in your life, knowing what'll make you feel satisfied and fulfilled, and going for it. I think that's very courageous. What was that voice telling you?
It was really talking about starting my own firm. And just to talk about that guilt part, I know you may ask some questions about diversity during this interview, because that is a big part of my platform, and I'm on a lot of boards and do a lot about bringing diversity to the legal profession. But that was another part of the guilt, because there weren't a lot of people that looked like me in the firms that I was in. And I feel like when you're given that opportunity, you have an opportunity to open the door and pave the way for other people to have that opportunity. So I thought that if I left that firm, then I was kind of like letting down or not, you know, providing that opportunity to others. And that was another part of the guilt. So, you know, but, you know, I feel like whatever route you go or door you go through, there are plenty of opportunities to bring diversity to the legal profession. And I really needed to look at it a lot broader. I mean, maybe that wasn't the path of how I was going to accomplish that goal, but there were many other paths to get to that same outcome. So that was fun.
Since you brought up the topic, let's talk about diversity. What do you do to support diversity in our profession? And kind of a corollary question, what can the rest of us do to support diversity in our profession?
Well, I'm on the board of the Old Dominion Bar Association, which is one of the largest or the oldest Black attorney bars in the country, and also the Northern Virginia Black Attorney Association. I'm also on the board of that organization, and I have been for very many years.
Right.
And, you know, I just think that it helps give mentorship to younger attorneys. I think it's a good network. I mean, there's a lot of questions that come up in our practice that, you know, it's difficult to ask your colleagues at times.
Yes.
There are resources that are out there that people don't know about. And I think that community is a big part of community and culture, a big part of, you know, just feeling comfortable in your skin in the legal profession. And when there are not a lot of people that look like you, it can be difficult to figure out that path. So, you know, being in these organizations and having lots of opportunities to mentor and teach, and through teaching, I do a lot of CLEs and other teaching opportunities, teach other attorneys from my experiences and what I've been through, I think has been a great platform for me. So, I think there are a lot of ways to get involved. There are a lot of organizations that are committed to diversity. And I spent many years early in my career not being that involved. I just kept my head down. I went to work, I billed hours. I wasn't that involved in any organizations. And, at some point I knew that I needed to do more. It wasn't enough to just show up at work. So, I just would say to people that, you kind of have to get involved. It's either time or money or talent. You got to figure out which one you can give and get involved.
So for the rest of the lawyers who are listening today, and you've shown what you've done, and they may be in different states with different organizations, but if you could speak to the rest of the lawyers listening to you today, what recommendations do you have for them about how they can support diversity in our profession?
Well, I think an easy one is there are always up and coming attorneys that need support. They need community, they need mentorship. And it is very easy to feel like, well, I don't have that much to offer because I'm not that far removed from where they are. And I dealt with that a long time. And I felt like, well, what can I tell you? I haven't made it. I haven't reached whatever the pinnacle is. So, am I the person to really be the mentor? Like, when do you change from the mentee to the mentor? Like, that's a hard, it's hard to reconcile that with yourself. But I think that no matter where you are in your career, there is something that you can offer to a new attorney, a story, a meal, there's lots of different things, and that will shape somebody's career. There were things that people did for me when I was a young lawyer that I will never forget and may have not been big to them. They may have not thought about it like that, but they opened doors. They pushed me through them. They, gave me insight into things that I never would have imagined. And, I just think that we have to look at it as an opportunity to get that.
That's great. I think you really highlight the importance of mentorship. I found that many lawyers, whether they're in firms or whether they're solo, started their own firm, they often feel like they don't have anybody to talk to. If you're in a firm, you're hesitant to raise concerns, doubts, confusions with people in the firm because maybe you'll be judged. Maybe you'll have a black mark next to your name, and having someone senior to you who's been there, done that, and can share some experience and who you can speak to in a trusted, confidential relationship is so special. And to answer your question about where do you shift from mentee to mentor, I think if you have 4 years of experience, you can help a new associate. If you have 8 years of experience, you can help the associate with several years. So in other words, I think you help anyone who is somewhere behind you. You don't need to be a partner in a big firm to be able to be a mentor. I think you can help anyone who you have more experience than, because it comes from a heart of generosity, which is what you have, generosity and support. And I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's important not to wait for someone to ask you. Like, sometimes people don't know what to ask, and you can kind of tell what they need. And that's, people can speak to you without, telling you exactly what it is that they need. And I think that just being aware of that is important because, like I said, there are people who offered me resources that I didn't even ask, that they knew that I needed, So I think that's part of it as well.
What challenges did you face, Margeaux, when you opened your own office? You had never had your own office before. You had a lot to learn about how to do it. You didn't have a client. So tell me about that process. That must have been scary.
It was very scary. And as a lawyer, I tend to, and I think a lot of other people do, catastrophize things. I mean, I just thought it was going to be like everything was going to fall apart my entire life. And, I think I know a few things about myself. And it's that, there's a saying, what do sharks do when they're cornered? They swim, right? I'm going to figure it out. Like, if you burn the boats and I have no other option, I will figure it out. I know that about myself. I will put in the work. I will put in the time. I may make some other sacrifices. I'm a very high B on the DISC scale. I may blow up the building, but I will get the job done. Like, that's my personality. There will be movement. I will get to whatever that perceived finish line is, and I knew that I needed to bring in money, which means I needed to get cases, which means I needed to talk to people about what I did so that when they had a case, they could send it to me. And my litigation has been my whole career. So people suing people. And at that point, I didn't care what the people were suing each other about. I mean, I didn't do criminal, I didn't do family, but if there was any kind of contract or money problem, call me. I can help you with it. And there were all types of amorphous, different problems that people had that I had never seen, heard of, knew nothing about. But at the time, I knew that I needed to build a practice. So, I took probably cases I shouldn't have taken. I figured it out. I got it done. We got some kind of result. They were happy, but it probably took way more time and energy than probably was worth it. But, I learned that lesson, and I try not to make the same mistake twice. So, I put a lot, I put everything into figuring out how to generate business. I read books. I talked to people who had generated business. And one of the key things is I just associated myself with people who are able to generate business very, very well. So even if I'm not a rainmaker, if you surround yourself with people who are rainmakers, not only will you possibly pick up something about how they're able to get these clients, but they're going to have overflow, right? They're going to have cases they can't do. So it was really a matter of figuring out who these people were and just being in their corner, being top of mind when they needed someone. And it was just, I went to enough networking events that I was able to identify those people, and, they became good friends. I learned a lot from them, and they've been pivotal to those first years.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I love your drive and how you believe in yourself. And I like the comment of burning the boats. Once you make a commitment to doing something like starting your firm, you just got to go. You just got to do it. And you figure that out. So for the young lawyer who's listening to you today, what advice do you have to that lawyer about how to build a successful career? Not only build a successful career, but to be happy doing it.
Well, I think the happiness part really depends on, what it is you want to do. I love entrepreneurship, but I know that it's not for everybody. And I know that there are lawyers who are in this boat who probably don't want to be. And, and there are people who are working at firms who want to be running their own firm. And I think a lot of your happiness is depends on, you doing some soul searching of what that happiness looks like for you. Because my happiness is not your happiness and yours is not mine. And, I think we try to tell ourselves that we would be happy if we were doing something that Joe is doing across the street. And I think a lot of people live their lives thinking about others and comparing themselves to others. And I spent so many years isn't being a partner at a big law firm the ultimate goal? I mean, that's what everybody told me the goal was, right? So now how is that not success? That is success for a lot of people, but it's your definition of what that means. And, I just had to kind of grasp hold of that. So I think the first part of that is determining that this is really what you want to do, because you're never going to be happy if it's not the road that you're supposed to be on, right? And then, I think that there's a lot of misperceptions about what owning a firm feels like and looks like on a daily basis. I don't think that there's a lot of freedom associated with that at the beginning, because you really quit one job and get 10. Now you're the CFO, the COO, the CMO, all of the things, you're the bookkeeper, you're the technology person, you're the finance person. It's all consuming. But I think after a while, you determine how to push some of those things to people who are better at them than you. And you have some faith that even if you cannot afford to do that, it will work out because you'll have more time to do some other things. I think it has a lot to do with trust in things that you cannot see, which is very difficult. Hiring that first person when you don't have the money to pay them in the bank is another one. Or you may not have enough work to give them. Capacity precedes growth. So you're going to have to, at some point, hire somebody when you may not have enough work to fill their plate or enough money to pay them, with the hopes that will work itself out. I mean, I think that there is a lot of that when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I think that the people who are ultimately the most successful have a really high risk tolerance and a good ability to learn from their mistakes and pivot when they need to.
The thing I really love about what you said and what I want to highlight is our happiness, our fulfillment comes from practicing in an arena in which we want to practice in. There are so many people who take that great job with a big firm with a big name and the big paycheck and think that should make them happy because that's what they're supposed to want. And they realize that may not really be what they want at all. They may want more flexibility in their hours. They may be more entrepreneurial. But too many folks don't take the time that you took during that forced break during your maternity to really figure out what is it that I want in my career as a lawyer. And I know you're under a lot of stress now from both running a business and handling your cases, but you're very fulfilled because you chose your direction in life. And for those of you who are listening, if you feel unhappy or stuck, take some time and reflect. What is it you want your career in law to look like? What values are important to you? Is it money, prestige, flexibility in time, independence, autonomy? Figure out those things and then plan your course accordingly.
Yeah.
You mentioned capacity precedes growth. And I know a lot of small firms, and I coach some of them, have that issue. When should they hire their next person? They're very busy. And when you're a solo and you hire a person, you've doubled your capacity. You're never ready to do that. You're never doing two persons work. You may be working 125% of your capability, but not 200%. How and when do you recommend someone hire that next person?
Before you think you need them. If you are working, nights and weekends and cannot see above what is going on right now, then you obviously need to hire somebody. Because there's no way for you to work on the firm when you're working in the firm like that. And a guy that I consider a mentor made this analogy the other day about washing dishes. I thought it was I think it hit the nail on the head. He was talking about, when you're washing dishes, it's a defined task. You feel like you're moving something forward. You're getting stuff done. You're putting the dishes, you're washing them, you're getting the food off, putting it in the dishwasher. You just feel like it feels comfortable, right? It's something that you know how to do. But then there's all these piles around your house of like miscellaneous stuff that has just built up, and it goes in different rooms. You don't know what to do with it. Your kids are piling it on. Like, that's the work on the firm, like figuring out that stuff, right? And that stuff is easy to look past that pile and just go to the dishes because you can get the dishes done, right? And that's the work. Like, I know how to do the legal work. No matter what it is, at this point, I have a way of figuring it out, right? So that's the easy stuff. But figuring out how to put a process in place so that other people can do this, that's the hard stuff, right? That's the stuff that's going to move the firm forward. And it's very easy to focus on the washing the dishes and not the pile. And I have that scenario going on I have 3 kids. There are piles everywhere. I walk past those piles. I can knock out some dishes and some laundry very easy, and that's the legal work. So I think that it just creates, it's a mindset shift where you have to start working on the stuff that they don't teach you in law school, right? The stuff
I think that is a great analogy because I'm the dishwasher in my family. But I tell you, I don't want to tackle the garage. That's where we put everything that we don't want to have around. We put it in the garage, and I can find a place for it, but I don't want to deal with it. But I think what you're saying is also important too. When you start your own firm and own it, being a lawyer is the part we're good at. Once we get the business in, handling our cases, we know how to do that. But we don't know how maybe to market ourselves. We don't know how to do the bookkeeping. We don't maybe understand financial statements, depending on what our background is. And we have a lot to learn in that arena. And that is something, we're now business owners. You're a business owner. You're a lawyer and a business owner, and you are the COO and COO of your firm. And that requires some attention too. And that attention takes away your time from working in the practice.
Yeah. I used to struggle with just feeling like I wasn't completing anything. Like if I, met with staff and talked to them about their performance, I didn't feel like I had billed hours or like tangibly completed something meaningful. And I think that that's a mindset shift too. This is real work. It doesn't, I can't write it down on a timesheet. It doesn't correlate to a specific amount of money. Because that's what we're ingrained to believe is, profitable, doing the actual work, the billable hours, the flat fee work, however, the contingency work, whatever that is, doing the depositions, the discovery, the pleading. I mean, as a litigator, that's what you are ingrained to believe is the value, right? But there's a lot of value in these other things that don't have that direct, tangible benefit.
I understand. Yep. And I want to talk a little bit about the work you do. I know you do business litigation, business divorces, so some as you described it. And I've done litigation for 45 years, and I can relate to what you said about sometimes you take cases in areas you don't really know, because sometimes we know litigation, but we may not know pizza franchises or dental practices or whatever may be involved. Each of your cases probably often comes from a different business arena. And I know trying those cases can be both very expensive and unpredictable. So negotiating a settlement is a good thing. How do you build rapport and trust with the opposing attorney to really be able to open the door to having a settlement that achieves your client's end and that of the other party?
So negotiation is a big part of our practice. It's a big part of my teaching platform. I teach a lot of classes about negotiation tactics and how to win. I call it negotiating like a poker pro. This is my newest seminar. And, I think that negotiation is a lot of strategy. And I think a lot of people, it's a lot like chess. And I think a lot of people don't put the foresight into the next step and the step after that. And, what does this mean? What is the ultimate outcome? What is the expectation? I think that's where negotiation, boiled down in a nutshell, that's where the wins come from. Putting a lot of time into talking to clients about what success looks like, and putting a lot of time into negotiation about how are we going to get there? How does this next step or this next offer play into the big picture? And if we don't take this, what can we possibly lose, or what's the best possible scenario? What can we gain? They call it the BATNA and the WATNA. But, I think that people walk into mediations and all types of negotiations just unprepared. That's the biggest downfall I see all the time. They're just like, oh, we'll get there. We'll throw out some numbers. If it settles, it settles. And I'm just like, you were not ready. You just weren't ready. You didn't there shouldn't be anything in this, the opposing party. Like, there shouldn't be anything that I'm telling you about your case that you don't know in this negotiation. Like, absolutely. There shouldn't be. There should be nothing the mediator is going to tell my client that he hasn't heard. But that happens all the time. Mediators walk in there and convince the client, tell them all kind of stuff they've never heard from their attorney. And then they're like, oh, well, maybe I should take this deal. If the mediator is telling your client something you haven't prepared them for, you're not ready, and I think that I come from a sports background, and practice is like the fundamental element of success in sports. Practice. We are going to win this game in practice. The game is just, that's the easy part, because we're ready. Before we got to the game, we knew what they were going to do. We watched the tape. We're in shape. We know the plays. Like, this is just we already know what's going to happen here, right? But I go into so many situations where I'm in awe at how little thought the other side has given to their negotiation position.
Wow. So lack of preparation by the opposing party is what you see as one of the biggest problems. And your message to people listening is prepare for your negotiation like you're preparing for trial. So you know every fact inside out, the other side's arguments, and you're prepared to rebut them. What about your relationships with opposing counsel? How do you most effectively connect with the opposing attorney so you can have a healthy, respectful, positive discussion about resolution?
Well, I think one of the benefits of where we are in the firm now is we have a niche, right? We do a lot of the same cases. We work in a lot of the same courts. We see a lot of the same judges, which means we see a lot of the same attorneys, right? So when somebody comes to me, an easy way to build rapport with new clients is I know opposing counsel. I've worked on 15 cases with them. We've been on the same side. We've been on alternate, other sides. We've won. We've tried. We've done it all, right? That's what clients want to hear. You have the experience, and I think that that's the benefit of having a niche, right? Because we're not doing criminal law and family law and all these different arenas. I know opposing counsel. I have evaluated them. I have respect for them in most cases. In 99% of the case, I mean, a lot of the lawyers we work with are very good at what they do. They're very intelligent. They're good communicators. They're not trying to stab you in the back. They're trying to win on the merits, right? So I think we're lucky I do have a Rambo litigator. There are some of those out there.
Yes, there are some of those, aren't they? And so let me ask you this, because I did a lot of family law and I did some employment law, and there were those kind of lawyers in both those arenas. How do you handle the Rambo lawyer, the lawyer who's just so aggressive, really unfair? Hate to use the word dishonest, but sometimes what they represent to you, they've done or will do isn't quite accurate. How do you handle that lawyer in a way that doesn't cause you too much stress, that protects your client, but yet is professional?
I think a lot of those situations, reputation precedes that person. So it's not just that they're treating me badly, they're treating all the lawyers badly, and that comes across in court. So, I don't think that I need to recreate the wheel in explaining to a judge how that is not what I said, and that's not what occurred. And those aren't the facts, and they're misrepresenting what occurred. I'm probably not the first person to stand in front of this judge and say that. And I think that that goes a long way. I think that judges talk. I mean, so, I put everything in writing. I have a lot of respect for this profession and the people in it. And, I'm not going to misrepresent what you told me. I think there are a lot of different ways people can interpret things. And I think that that's important to point out. I heard them say, X. They may have said Y, but what I heard them say was X, right? And there's a difference in that. And I think that those intricacies matter. So, I am, I feel like I would hope at this point my reputation precedes me. So when I say to a judge that's not what occurred, I think they take that, they believe that, because I am not, I use my words carefully. Right. I'm not going to,
well said.
And I take pride in that. I'm not going to say that this is something it is not, So
I know I had a family law case with our local Rambo lawyer, and I soon realized he called everyone he had ever met a liar, and he did it to me twice in open court before the judge. And I've prided myself on being honest and reputable, and I was quite offended. And I actually had a hard time maintaining my usual cool demeanor. But my co-counsel said, look, everyone knows who he is, what he says, and he says about everybody, so let it roll off your back. And so that's very good advice that you gave. Can you conduct an effective negotiation with a lawyer like that, or is it one of those you just plan on trying the case?
We do a lot of mediation, and I think that mediation is a good way to confront that, because there are cases that are fueled by the attorney and there are cases that are fueled by the client. And I think it's important to determine which one you're dealing with, right? Is the attorney really the rah-rah attorney who's telling his client to fight this case and they don't really have a good case? Because if that is, the situation, that's a perfect opportunity for me to say to the mediator, I don't think their client knows these facts. So I need you to go over there and tell them this is exactly what we're going to do. I don't want it to come from their attorney. Their attorney hasn't told them that. And he's not going to say it in the way that you would. And I know that you understand that this is what we're about to do. So that is another way for me to get the information that needs to be conveyed to the client to the other side. And, that judge, usually a retired judge, has some rapport with the other side. So even if there is a lawyer who is fueling some case that is not going to go anywhere, I think that mediation is a good way to kind of circumvent that situation, because we have somebody else who can go in there and has some rapport and can say that, and a lot of times the question comes up, what is the rapport between the attorneys and, who is really fueling this? That's a conversation that I have with the mediator before we go into the mediation. And many times I will say, I don't think the lawyer, I think it's the lawyer. I don't think the client has a clue, right? So I think that is a great way to overcome that hurdle.
Mediation is a wonderful approach, and it should be done in every case when The other side is at least willing to discuss things reasonably. Communication is so important. What advice do you have for the younger lawyer listening about effective communication skills and negotiation and how to communicate in a better and more persuasive way?
I think that's a great question. I think there's it's difficult to answer. I think that there's so many aspects to negotiation, but I think as far as our clients go, and I say this a lot, I think a lot has to do with expectation, and I think it has to do with being very clear and very direct with our clients about what the situation looks like. There may be lots of very difficult facts, but the best part of our job is boiling difficult situations into tangible, understandable nuggets of information, right? And I think that that's the way that we need to learn how to talk to our clients. I mean, not even just our clients, opposing counsel and judges. Negotiation can be much more persuasive if we take it from very high level concepts and make it very understandable. And, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, there may be 15 moving parts in very complicated, business divorce situations. There are lots of entities, there are different partners, there's derivative actions, there's IP, there's real estate, there's all types of difficult things, concepts, right? But at the end of the day, it usually boils down to a few very big concepts that we need to be very clear on with our clients. And I think that that's where the persuasion comes in, right? So, I think that that is the skill, to be able to see the big picture and also be able to see the little pieces, right, at the right time. So.
Well said. I think a lot of it does have with your client being really well-informed, well-advised, knowing the upside and downside to trial and settlement. And at least from me, having done litigation and settlements for quite a while, I always found it very advantageous when I could to develop a relationship with the other attorney where he knew, liked, and trusted me. Because then when I represent to him something about my case, he tends to be more persuaded by it. Then if we have that rocky relationship where he can't stand me, we're always at ends with each other, always disagreeing. But if I can fuel a relationship, a professional relationship where we really connect with each other and he respects me and what I say, to me, that helps me get to a good settlement place.
Yeah. I don't believe just because we're adversaries in court means that we need to be enemies. I mean, I've never believed that. And to the extent that I can uplift others in our community, I'm all about it. I had a case not too long ago where the opposing counsel, I thought he did a really good job. There were some somewhat difficult arguments, but I thought he did a great job in court conveying, his case, right? The case ended up settling, and he does some criminal law. And I had a client that had some criminal law issues that were intertwined with our case. And I called that guy and said, I think he would do a great job. So now we're co-counsel, right? Wow. And I'm on the membership committee of our Inn of Court, which is a great community of attorneys where we can educate each other. And I said, you should be in this room. And, you need a recommendation from somebody who's in the organization, and I will be your recommendation. And he applied, Wonderful. So, I think that matters. We started out as adversaries. We weren't enemies, but, we may have cases against each other in the future. Who knows? But, those relationships matter. And I think he's a good attorney at the end of the day, right? Whether we're on the same side or opposite side.
That's wonderful, Margeaux. And I love how you attempt to both mentor and educate other attorneys and lift and support them. Your service to the profession, your generosity and giving of your time when you have so little of it is really a beautiful thing. And I thank you for that.
Yeah.
I call this podcast The Free Lawyer, Margeaux, because, and from owning your own firm, sometimes you feel overwhelmed, trapped, stressed. Sometimes you have those feelings. But I think it's important that we as lawyers learn how to really feel some sense of freedom in what we do. To you, Margeaux, what does personal freedom mean to you?
I think that's a great question. And, my 10 and 20-year plan changes frequently. But, I think the freedom really looks like being able to practice the way I want to in the firm that I want to, with the people that I like and respect. Financial freedom that, if I don't come to work today, it will be okay. That there's a pipeline of cases in front of us. It just gives me some calm, where I can take a break and I can go on vacation and not have to take my laptop. I think that I've worked for years to get to that point. And, I really value that time that I can spend with my family uninterrupted so I can be present for them. I think that love with my kids is spelled time, TIME. So being able to step away from the practice and still have it deliver the same quality and level of service, the values that I started it with, to have other people buy into those values and deliver that same level of service without me being there is, that's the goal. That's the freedom to me, right?
Wonderful, wonderful. And I want to say, having listened to you, you've accomplished almost all that you just described. You found the practice that you want. You work with who you want to work with, doing the work you enjoy, developing financial freedom, developing time to be with your family and know that your firm is still running and running successfully. So my compliments to you at, in fairly short order, 8 years or so, being able to develop a practice that is satisfying most of your dreams of feeling a sense of freedom.
Thank you.
Margeaux, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate all the insights you had to share about your journey and running your own firm and successful negotiation tactics and techniques. How can listeners who may be hearing you today best get in touch with you?
I'm all over LinkedIn. So if you look up Margeaux Thomas or the Thomas Law Office, you will find us there. My email is mthomas@thomaslawplc. Feel free to shoot me an email. Or give us a call. The firm number is 703-957-2577.
Margeaux, thank you very, very much. And to all those who are listening to this episode, thank you for being a part of our journey. And I wish you all the best. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Free Lawyer Podcast. Wherever you are listening, if you enjoyed what I shared, please leave me a rating and review. I would appreciate hearing more about what you like best and what topics you might like me to cover in future episodes. If you are interested in experiencing a more fulfilling and a more successful life, please contact me at www.GaryMiles.net, where you can schedule a free discovery call with me so I can learn more about you, your challenges, and your dreams. I appreciate each and every one of you and have a great rest of your day. Thanks to all of you for your support.